Hi guys, and welcome to our English class. Today we are on Unit 4, and our weekly topic is going to be all about inspiration. We're going to be talking about how can others inspire us, and what exactly is this word inspire? What does that mean? You inspire me. Danny talked to the firefighters in his neighborhood. He learned all about what they do. Danny thinks they are brave heroes. He wants to be a firefighter too. People who are courageous and helpful inspire us. When we feel inspired, we want to help others too. So when we feel inspired, we get this good feeling inside of us. Maybe it gives us some motivation and we want to do something, or we want to be something, or we want to change something. And it's all because we have watched someone else do it and it inspires us. All right, let's go ahead and let's look at our vocabulary for today. So first up, we have adventurous. So if you're adventurous, it means that you are willing to take some risks or try some new ideas, try some new experiences. You have some courage. Whitewater rafting is an adventurous and exciting activity. So next we have courageous. So courageous means that you are brave, that if something is scary or painful, it's not going to stop you. You're going to keep going. Maya was courageous at the doctor's office. Next, we have extremely. Extremely means to a very great degree. Extremely, very. Some plants can grow in extremely dry places. Then we have weird. So weird is kind of like not natural. It's supernatural or not normal. The Venus flytrap is a weird and strange plant. And today we're going to be learning some poetry words. So the first poetry word that we have is called free verse. Now a free verse poem is poetry that has no rules. It doesn't have to rhyme. It doesn't need to have a beat. It doesn't have to be a limerick or funny. It can be whatever you want it to be. Some of Emma's free verse poems rhyme, and some do not. Next, we have repetition. So repetition is when you are repeating something that you've already said. Using the same word several times in a poem is called repetition. Repetition, repetition. Now we have a narrative poem. Now, a narrative poem is a poem that tells a story of an event, but it's in the form of a poem. It may rhyme or it may not rhyme. It could be short or it could be really long, but it has a beginning, a middle, and an end, just like a story does. I wrote a narrative poem about the history of flight. And last, we have rhyme. So we know that rhyming words have the same ending sound, okay? Especially in poetry. So the words night and right rhyme because they end in the same sound. All right, so our first poem that we're going to read today is called Ginger's Fingers. Ginger's fingers are shooting stars. They talk of adventurous trips to Mars. Fingers talking without words, singing when sounds can't be heard. Ginger's fingers are ocean waves. They talk of fish and deep sea caves. Fingers talking without words, singing when sounds can't be heard. Ginger's fingers are butterflies. They talk of a honey gold sunrise. Fingers talking without words, singing when sounds can't be heard. Okay, so first off, I would like you to tell me, there are two vocabulary words that we just learned that we could talk about in this poem. Can you find two? So the first thing we want to look at is rhyming. So we have the ends of the lines rhyming. We have stars and Mars, waves and caves. This is two examples of rhyming. Another example we have is repetition. Fingers talking without words. Fingers talking without words. Fingers talking without words. Okay, so they are repeating some of the lines in the poem. Now, do you know why they do this? Now, this is to put some emphasis on this. This might be the main idea of the story. Now, do you want to know, how can fingers talk without words? What does that mean? Can my fingers talk? No, they can't. Can your fingers become a butterfly? Maybe they can become a butterfly. Can your fingers become an ocean wave? Maybe they can become an ocean wave, okay? So we can act out a lot of things with our hands. And this can become like a story without words. Here we go, the giant. Dodge, dart, dash. Zigzag, slash. I sizzle, sizzle when I dribble. I'm lightning on the court. My team calls me the giant, even though I'm kinda short. The other team might laugh to see a player tiny as a flea, but I'm a rocket, fiery hot. Watch me soar, soar on my jump shot. Stretching, flexing, push, push, push. My ball flies up and in, swoosh, whoosh. I show them all, you don't need tall to rule the ball. Okay, so what kind of poem is this? Can you tell? Yeah, this is a rhyming poem. Also, this has some really cool beats. It almost sounds like a rap song. Now, what is this poem about? Basketball, very good. Now, do you think this might inspire you to want to take a basketball and shoot in a hoop? Maybe it inspires you to want to get out and try to play some cool basketball. All right? Okay, can you find a place where there is repetition in our poem? Okay, awesome. So we have some words that are repeating, like push, 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 or like soar, soar. Now, why do you think they make these words all capital letters? Why do you think that the author did that? For emphasis, very good. So this is emphasizing I sizzle, sizzle when I dribble, right? So it wants you to have more power in the words when you say it. Okay, fantastic. Captain's log. We set sail from a port in Spain. Sun high, no sign of rain. The sea was satin, so blue, so blue. Our ship was a bird, we flew, we flew. Just past noon, how very weird, came a sound that we most feared. Thunder rumbled a giant drum. Thunder rumbled, rum-tum-tum. Rain was pouring, pouring. The wind was a monster, roaring, roaring. My crew, extremely terrified, froze at their posts, pale and wide-eyed. Okay, so where is this story taking place? Good, so it's happening in Spain. Very good. Captain's log. What kind of poem do you think this is from our vocabulary words? Great. This is a narrative poem. This is telling a story, okay? We see that we have a beginning, Captain's log. We start in Spain. And what kind of venture do they go on? A sea adventure. So they're going on a boat. The sea was satin, so blue, so blue. What happens when they are on the sea? Perhaps there is a thunderstorm. Thunder rumbled, a giant drum. Rain was pouring, pouring. So there's a big storm as they are on the sea. A huge wave lifted up our ship. My feet began to slip, slip, slip. I knew that it was up to me to guide us through that stormy sea. I grabbed a rope, reached for the mast, and got back to the helm at last. Shook off the rain, looked at my crew. Steady, lads, I'll get us through. The crew heard my call. Each lad stood up tall. All hands now on deck. We trimmed every sail. Courageous together, we rode out that gale. All right, fantastic. Now, does this poem inspire you to do or be anything? Maybe this would inspire you to not give up, that if something difficult comes your way, you are going to keep going and overcome anything that is difficult or anything that might be a little bit scary, because you're going to have courage and an adventurous spirit. All right, fantastic. Now, we are going to do our best to try to write a poem. And what we're going to try to do is we're going to try to write a narrative poem, a poem that has at least a beginning that we want to start, okay? So it kind of has a story to go to it, okay? So remember, this can rhyme or not rhyme. It doesn't matter. All right, so let's just try to have some fun. There once was a young boy who lived in a castle with his favorite toy. All right, very good. There once was a young boy who lived in a castle with his favorite toy. In the spring, every May, his best friend would come over to play. So what could happen when his friend comes over to play? What could they do? Outside the castle, they would hop and they were sad when darkness came because they had to stop. Alas, the young boy's friend would have to leave. Let's think of a word that rhymes with leave. Leave, please, weave, need, knees. Okay, this is kind of how you need to write poetry. We have to try to think of some ideas that rhyme. So alas, the young boy's friend would have to leave. The little boy with the toy would yell, "Come back next year, please." So every year, his friend would return. So let's think of a word that rhymes with return. Return, earn, mern, wern, turn, spurn, kern, learn. Ooh, learn. Learn might be a good one. So every year his friend would return. Learn, learn. How can we write learn in our last sentence? Let's see. So every year his friend would return. Perhaps we could say, playing new games together is what they would learn. Okay? So, easy peasy. Look at that. We just made a poem just like that. There once was a young boy who lived in a castle with his favorite toy. In the spring, every May, his best friend would come over to play. Outside the castle they would hop, and they were sad when darkness came because they had to stop. Alas, the young boy's friend would have to leave. The little boy with the toy would yell, "Come back next year, please." So every year his friend would return. Playing new games together is what they would learn. Okay, good job writing a poem with me. That was pretty awesome. So now we are going to move on, and we're going to work with some of the vocabulary words. So we have 4 words. We have extremely, weird, courageous, and adventurous. So I'm going to read the story, and I want you to put the words in the correct place. Helga's Aunt Gerda invited her to go hiking. Aunt Gerda hiked all the time in the canyon near her house. She even took pictures as she hiked the trails. Helga always enjoyed looking at the photographs of trees, birds, and even looking bugs that she had never seen before. Helga was very excited about going hiking in the canyon. The last time she had done something was a nature walk she took in the field behind her house. But that was hardly as daring and exciting as a hike in the canyon. Helga remembered one of her favorite stories about a explorer who had been brave enough to climb Mount Everest. The canyon wasn't exactly Mount Everest, but it was a start. There was a knock on the door. Helga ran to answer it, with her mother close behind. It was her aunt. "Are you ready for our adventure, Helga?" asked Aunt Gerda. "More than you know," said Helga. "Let me grab my backpack." "Your backpack is on the couch," said Helga's mother. "The summer sun is already shining brightly, so it will be hot on the trails. I put 2 bottles of cold water and some apple slices in there for you." "Thanks, Mom," said Helga. Then she ran to join Aunt Gerda for their hiking adventure. Okay, are you ready for me to give you the answers? Here we go. Number 1 was weird. Number 2 is adventurous. Number 3 is courageous. And number 4 is extremely. Very good. So hopefully you did a good job with our vocabulary today. Now we're going to look at our grammar. And we are going to be talking about verbs. Now, not all verbs add the ed to a past tense verb, okay? So like jumped. In the past tense. But there are some verbs called irregular verbs, and they have a special spelling for the past tense. Some irregular verbs are come and came, do and did, say and said, go and went, eat and ate, sing and sang. Okay, so we have to change the word if it is in the past tense for irregular verbs. Now, just a reminder that a simple sentence has one independent clause and a compound sentence has two or more independent clauses. Now, what we want to do is we want to write the correct past tense verb on the sentence, okay? So, an author came to our school yesterday. I sang a song for our school talent show. Cam did the same juggling act as last year. We ate our lunch outside today. My friend went camping last week. Okay? So we just have to change the word in order to get the correct past tense. Now, here we go. Some irregular verbs have this special ending. Okay? So we have, has or had, does, did, or do. Subjects and helping verbs must always agree in simple and compound sentence. Okay, so it's a little confusing, so let's do some examples together and it'll help you to better understand what it's trying to tell you. Okay? So, my family has gone to the seashore often during the summer. Now, goad is not correct. We need to change this. So we would say, my family has gone. My family has gone to the seashore often during the summer. My teacher has given a speech at the White House. We would change give to given. My teacher has given a speech. The puppy has growed a lot this past year. Growed is not correct. It would be the puppy has grown a lot this past year. The birds had singed all morning. Now that's not correct. Had singed. No, the birds had sung all morning. Okay, now that brings us to our draft model. Aunt Barb works really hard. She speaks 3 languages. Aunt Barb helps me fly and never lets me fall. Now, this is a little vague, and we need to revise it by adding some stronger, more descriptive words into the paragraph. So, Aunt Barb works really hard. Maybe we could change really to our new word that is extremely. Aunt Barb works extremely hard. Now, what kind of languages does Aunt Barb speak? Maybe she can speak English and Spanish, and maybe she speaks French too. Maybe she can speak all 3 of those. What strong verbs or details would show how Aunt Barb helps the speaker fly? Aunt Barb helps me fly and never lets me fall. How? How does she help fly? What could you say? Maybe she holds me up in the air. Maybe that's how she helps her fly. She holds me up in the air and carries me up high. Maybe that's a more descriptive term of how she can help you fly. So let's give this a try. Let's put it all together. Aunt Barb works extremely hard. She speaks English, Spanish, and French. Aunt Barb holds me up in the air and helps me fly and never lets me fall. Okay, there we go. So this is like a free verse poem, okay? It doesn't have to rhyme, and it's not a narrative poem. This is just like a little free verse poem. Aunt Barb works extremely hard. She speaks English, Spanish, and French. Aunt Barb holds me up in the air and helps me fly and never lets me fall. All right, so we added some more specific details into this draft model. It gives the reader a better idea of what we can see and what is happening. Okay, guys, that's the end of our lesson today. Thanks so much for joining me. Happy learning English, and I will see you next time. Bye.